Greetings, you wonderful warriors of the broken sword. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Nick.
And we are the Gosslings. And this is our Thursday night episodes, which we like to call the Church of What's Cool.
Church of What's Cool. Doing it live. We're doing it live.
We're doing it live, baby. And we're going to have a great conversation tonight with one of our dear friends, Austin Trunick, the Canon Film Guide master. And I'm going to save it. But until then, we're going to quickly burn through all of our preliminaries here.
That's right. And we'll begin with our toast, of course.
Yes.
You guys have done the toast before with us. If you have your drinking vessels, raise them high.
You lead.
I will lead. Take up the broken sword of your father.
And strike down the darkness.
Man.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's definitely a bourbon day.
That is delicious Kool-Aid, iced tea.
Yeah, that's right.
Sweet tea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, and real quick, we want to acknowledge our. I'm already getting tongue-tied. That's some sweet tea, let me tell you. My goodness.
That's the sweetest of the sweet tea
Sweetest,
on a hot
sweetest.
summer day.
Real quick, if you're watching, if you're lurking right now, go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the bell, and if you've already done those things, hit the like button.
Yes.
That'd be great too. And want to start off by recognizing our sponsors. Go to ChericoPottery.com. Check out these amazing Kothon Spartan mugs. These are replicas of what the Spartans drank out of. They are durable. They are beautiful. Each and every one is handcrafted, hand-painted by Joel Cherico and his team. Drink like a man. Get yourself a Kothon.
That's right. Yep. And after you're done drinking your libation, you can wipe it from your manly pate of facial hair and then take care of that hirsute majesty that adorns your face with Giordani Jovanovic.
Someone's a writer.
Right. Sometimes more of a wronger than a writer. JordaniJovanovic.com. Hair and skincare products made for real men by real men, or as I like to say, be as sexy as you are deadly. Give 007 a run for his money. Awaken your inner John Wick. Don't be afraid to go over the top with a bit of Giordani Jovanovic.
Speaking of over the top,
Yes.
tell us about our guest tonight.
Dude, we've been trying to do this for like 2 months, 3 months now. And we're finally doing it, and it's awesome. We are talking to our dear friend, Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide, and we are talking about arguably the best Canon film.
It is the best Canon
It's
film.
at least Nick's favorite.
It's my favorite, but it's the best too.
The Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling masterpiece, Over the Top.
Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend, Austin Trunick. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me back.
Thank you for coming back. This whole Canon film journey for me has been really interesting because I remember being a kid in the 80s. I saw some of the movies. I didn't know anything about Canon Films.
Yeah.
The company, the movie maker, and our very first interview together was enlightening. And I've gone back and watched some of these movies since, and I'm like, I remember. Okay.
Yeah.
B movies, quick
It's all
production,
coming
low
together.
budget, and then iconic movies from the 80s.
Yeah.
And at the end of our last interview, we talked about watching Over the Top. And we decided that would be the topic of our next conversation with you. So tell us about your first exposure to this movie, and we will take it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Over the Top. It is the Sylvester Stallone, really his family-friendly entry into his filmography. This movie came at a time where I'm going to grab a prop here. Pretend I'm Carrot Top here, but this was the Rambo period. This was a time in the mid 80s where there was a Rambo cartoon, there were Rambo toys, there were Rambo lunchboxes.
Nice. Yeah.
And same picture, both sides. But Sly was starting to catch some flack for it. A lot of parents were looking at him and saying, "You're making these movies. They're being marketed to kids. Like kids idolize you, but you know your body counts in your movies, whether it's Cobra or Rambo 2 or something like that. They're humongous." I think he was starting to feel that. He had he had a kid, he had a young son, and he wanted to do something that was more, I guess, something you could I mean, I watched the Rambo movies too young with my dad. I think a lot of us
Didn't
did
we all? Yeah.
at that age. But something that would be acceptable to, take your young kid to a movie theater and see a new Sylvester Stallone movie. And Over the Top was a project that Canon had, and that Sly, they ended up luring Sly into do it. And I'm sure we'll get more of that in a little bit. But my first exposure to this movie is, like I said, I was aware of Sylvester Stallone. I was having a father who was big into action movies, and that was, our bonding experience was a lot of times revolved around the video store and things that I would rent. I'd rent the kid movies, he rent his movies, and I get to watch most of the movies, occasionally covering my eyes at points when instructed. But so I knew Sylvester Stallone back then, but Over the Top was probably the first movie that I saw at an appropriate age, I would say.
Yeah.
And this was 1987. I mean, I would have seen it later on, but yeah, a staple at video stores, on on cable, on.
Is that a VHS copy?
It is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous, dude. That's awesome.
This one, the rental sticker's not legible, so unfortunately, I can't tell you where this particular copy was rented out. But yeah,
There it is.
This is a
1987, right? Is that the year it came out? 87.
Yes.
Yeah. So Rambo had been out. He's, he's just living on that Rocky money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sylvester Stallone and probably the copyright, the royalties for like the main theme song, "Living on a Prayer." No, not "Living on a Prayer." What was it?
Go Fly Now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that had to be the whole budget for the movie.
I don't know. There's that sweet action scene where they drive the truck through.
You're talking about Over the Top. Gonna Fly Now.
Over the Top. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Over the Top. Yeah, Over the Top with Sammy Hagar. They had a Kenny Loggins track on there.
Yeah.
Yes. That you say Sylvester Stallone was probably the whole budget. He was approximately half the budget.
Wow.
This is a movie that was one of the most expensive Canon made. It was about $24 million. 12 of that went to Sly.
Wow.
So it was no joke. It was for a while. It was the record for the highest paid, most money one actor had made for one film. Which is why he did. Which is why he did it. One of the Canon, they couldn't. Sly was one of the biggest actors in the world at the time, and they had to get him to come make a movie for Canon. It was required for them to make him the highest paid actor in Hollywood.
Wow.
That's ironic considering how frugal Canon tends to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me, though. I mean, he was probably familiar with Canon films. He's like, you want me to be in your movie, you're going to have to pay me more than anyone's ever been paid.
Total mercenary move.
Yeah.
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 But for what ended up being maybe one of the best Canon films and one of the most iconic movies of the 80s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought so. I thought it was their best film for sure.
Yeah. It's a movie that Canon didn't. I mean, again, they were a frugal company. They don't really have $12 million in the bank to write a check to Stallone. So
right.
He really got an IOU, and they went and were able to get Warner Brothers to co-produce it and pick up a lot of the bill. And notice product placement. This movie has a glorious amount of product.
Arborol.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Toyota.
Yeah.
Jaguar.
Yep.
Yeah. Every automotive battery, there are moments in this movie where it's like
Nintendo when they're in the
arcade.
Arcade.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's like a not Super Mario Brothers arcade game, and then they pan to another console game, and it just says Nintendo across the side of it. Doesn't tell you what game it is, just says Nintendo.
Brought to you by Pepsi and Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So family friendly movie. I mean, which is not normal for Canon.
No, there were not a lot of them. They tried very late in their run to get into the family movie game, and that was only because they had bought a bunch of movie theaters and were tired of just showing Disney reruns or reissues every summer. So they started making low budget fairy tale movies. The Canon Movie Tales series came out of that. but stuff like Over the Top was something that they were really, for 1987, it was one of their tentpole movies. 1987 is the same year that gave us Masters of the Universe and Superman 4. And these movies combined kind of their lack of success, unfortunately, greatly contributed to the company's collapse and descent into straight to video. That's where they went after these movies came out and flopped. And
they overplayed their financial hands trying to pay Sly to be in the movies.
Right. It was one of those things that they paid him all this money, and it was a joke around Hollywood because they were proud to have Sylvester Stallone join the Cannon family, be able to put his face and name on all their ads. But I think a lot of the other studios were like, "You're doing this all for a arm wrestling movie."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And you're spending. He's making more than they're paying him for Rocky sequels or Rambo sequels or things that were sure to make tons of money to play Lincoln Hawk, the estranged arm wrestling, truck driving father of
Lincoln Hawk. That's the
yeah.
Cannon film character's name.
Absolutely.
So I watched it with my 11-year-old and my 13-year-old, and we're like prudish, and I thought it was entirely appropriate for them. Couple of swear words, no big deal. Other than that, totally safe. My daughter that night, my 11-year-old, she asked if she could arm wrestle her mom before going to sleep that night. That's how jazzed she was about the movie. And my son, when I was telling Jonathan this, we watched the movie, and then I said, "All right, I'm gonna go brush my teeth, and then I'll pray with you before we go to bed." So I go in and brush my teeth, and I hear him in his bedroom, and he's got these new weights that he just got for his birthday. I can hear him in there. He pumping up great arm wrestling. So it's like it's great for kids. Really inspiring. It's really inspiring, and pretty decent moral lesson in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something too you really need to give credit to Sly for. This is something that I have read again, another prop I'm going to grab here, but the Overtop novelization, and this was actually based on the script that was.
That's awesome.
This one's amazing. If you're an Over the Top fan and you can find this for a few bucks on eBay, it's worth reading. But it is based on the draft before.
Nick's totally gonna buy it.
It's on my reading list now. Yeah. It's a done deal.
So okay, rewinding a little bit. This is a movie that the original script was R-rated. This is a script that had existed since the late 70s. It was supposed to be the sequel to this vigilante film called The Farmer, which you can look up the trailer for. A very violent, almost like Death Wish territory type movie. Wow. Yeah. And so that was a script by Gary Conway. It came to David Engelbach, who was famous for writing Death Wish 2 at the time. He rewrote it. Cannon got a hold of it. They had Sterling Siliphant, who was a great screenwriter, rewrite it. But it was still pretty... I mean, it had a lot of the same father-son dynamic, but very, very violent. I will say violent. Okay. And then Sly rewrote it, and he gets the first top screenwriting credit when you watch the movie. But he was the one that really went down. People wouldn't expect that from Sylvester Stallone, but he went and he took out most of the violence, and it's very funny if you read the novelization, because it is like an alternate, like dark version of what we see on the screen. The same familiar story, but there's like hitmen after Lincoln Hawk the whole time, and he's there's a scene where basically it plays out the same way it does in the movie for the most part, where he's at the arm wrestling tournament at the end, and his father-in-law is trying to basically buy him out of his son's life. And he says no, but in the book, his father-in-law sends his like bodyguard who knows judo, and they have this like knockdown drag out fight, and he ends up the guy's trying to like break his limbs and like during this. It's crazy. It's crazy. But the scene ends with Sylvester Stallone's Lincoln Hawk basically beating up his father-in-law so that he can't like come after him and stop the tournament. He actually pops his like knees out, not the knees, but his hips out of their sockets. And it's
Oh my gosh.
it's
nice.
great. Yeah, there's a lot of that. So yeah, if you want to read what Over the Top would have been had Sly not taken out all of the R-rated violence, the novelization's a great way to see what that alternate timeline Over the Top could have looked like.
That's so funny. They did that for a lot of novelizations in the 80s and 90s. I remember, like, they basically would. They just take the shooting script and they would just put it into, transpose it into, like, novel format. And I remember it was the same thing with Return of the Jedi. Well, probably all 3 Star Wars movies, but I remember specifically there was a Return of the Jedi novelization that had storyboard art in it. And it was the exact same thing. It was like the script that like 95 or 90% of the script made it into the finished product, But then like you would read it and you would read like these extra bits of dialogue where like Obi-Wan's talking about Mustafar, or like all these things that you see now, and like Luke with the lightsaber in the beginning and all that stuff. It's all in that like original novelization. So like it must have been just like a cheap, like easy tie-in merchandising fix back in the day to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and in a lot of those cases, they would be working with scripts that weren't final, and because the publishing timeline was to be able to get the book on the shelf within the same week that the movie was in theaters, when people were going to be buying the novelization either on their way to the movie or on the way home from it.
Yeah,
they had to expand it into a novel in pretty quick fashion. And yeah, Canon had quite a few novelizations of their movies, and a lot of them have a lot of scenes that did not make the movie for one reason or another.
I want to talk about the arm wrestling tournament at the end of the last half an hour of the movie is all at the tournament, which is
I was surprised when I watched it, Austin. I was telling Nick, I was like, man, like the arm wrestling thing, the actual tournament in Vegas, you would think is like maybe 15, 20 minutes, No, it's like the whole third act of the movie.
Yeah.
You know? It's like a solid 35 minutes of the movie is like just the arm wrestling tournament at the end.
So I got to ask you about some of the other arm wrestlers.
Oh yeah, and the interviews.
Yeah,
the interviews are my favorite.
The interviews
part.
are awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with any of those guys. Are any of them? Were they all actors, or were they professional wrestlers? Like they had this.
Were they professional arm wrestlers?
Yeah, or like real arm wrestlers.
There was a mix of people who came in there. There were some actual champion arm wrestlers in there. The guy who plays Bull Hurley, the main villain in here, was an arm wrestler, and he ended up becoming an actor after that. He's in a bunch of Canon movies. I think he has a small part in one of the Tim Burton Batman movies, I believe. And yeah,
yeah, that's right.
What was he?
He's one of the he's like the fat detective, right? In the Tim Burton Batman.
It's been so long.
Corrupt fat detective who like has the hat, the fedora, and the trench coat, and he's like got the 5 o'clock shadow, but he's got the jowls. I think I recognize him. But maybe
something that's interesting about too is Over the Top, unlike Canon movies, they didn't have a ton of merchandise outside of the novelizations usually. But Over the Top had a whole toy line. They had there were action figures that had arm wrestling motions if you press the things on their back.
Sweet.
Yeah, they actually made a kid-size like arm wrestling table that looks like the one that they use in the tournament in the movie.
Like the red and blue cushions.
Yeah, the both sides. You had a red and blue cushion. It was the kid,
and the handle, like the bike handle
peg.
Yeah, that was all. They shrunk it down to children's size and made it out of cheap plastic. But the action figures are funny because they base them on characters that weren't the actors cast in the movie. These were kind of A lot of them were based on arm wrestlers that they'd kind of met along the tournament circuit and things like that. So you look at these figures and they'll have the same names as the characters in the movies, but their images are based on actual arm wrestlers from that were part of the our professional arm wrestling scene.
Wow,
So you can those if anybody wants to go see them, just put in over the top action figures on eBay because they're ridiculously expensive. I don't own any of them.
I bet they are.
I bet they are. I wonder if that created any type of like royalty issues with those arm wrestlers. You know, they're using their likeness to sell toys based on characters in the movie.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'd be curious to know that.
I just know that this movie was not as, I mean, it's beloved now, but at the time, it was not the huge hit that would have supported toys flying off the shelves. So when I go
about that,
when I'm researching where to, like, looking for old ads for the toys and stuff, such in newspapers, they're always at KB Toys, and which was like the clearance toy place.
Yep.
So these went from, you know, your first run stores to KB pretty quickly in 1987.
Who's your favorite arm wrestler in the movie? Well, Austin, who is your favorite? I know mine. I got mine picked out.
I mean, oh gosh, I'd have to choose between Bull Hurley, just because he's so scary looking, so big and scary looking.
Yeah,
but I love
scary dude.
I think it's Grizzly who drinks the motor oil.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
And the first time he arm wrestles in the tournament, he's wrestling Lincoln Hawk, and he's got a cigar in his mouth, and he lock arms, and he just eats the cigar, chews it up. Remember that?
I gotta look this guy up.
My kids freaked out when he ate this cigar that was in his mouth, and then he's drinking the motor oil. And then, like, later on in the tournament, he's off to the side, like, drinking Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. This is
this is hairy guy,
and he wears the FUBAR shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
FUBAR shirt.
Yeah, that was gonna be my pick too. Yeah,
that guy was crazy. Yeah. That was a great character.
So I got a real basic question for you, Austin, that still to this day has gone unanswered in my brain. Why arm wrestling?
Well, I think they really hoped they could do that they could have the same magic what Rocky did for boxing, that they could have their own sort of sport in that way. And a lot of professional arm wrestling leagues and things like that, they were very supportive. They were all very excited this movie because this was the first time that their sport, which was, you know, very insular and not really, it's not something you're seeing on ESPN or anything like that.
Yeah, it's like slap competition nowadays.
Right.
You know? Well, I think, you know, I would suspect that, you know, we're talking about late 80s. It's like the most machismo thing you can do as a guy in the 80s is arm wrestle. And it's the one thing that everyone can do and not get in trouble.
Yeah.
You can do it with your friends. Your kids can do it. And doesn't matter if, you know, if they're at school or church or whatever. It's just boys being boys, just arm wrestling. Everyone likes arm wrestle.
Yeah.
But it's like such a macho thing, you know?
Yeah.
Just like meth.
It's perfect. Yeah, just like meth. You do
I
it at your church, at your school.
Do it with your friends.
Do it with your friends. Yeah.
Your pastor.
Invite your pastor over. I was just gonna say.
They do
it. Dates. It's awesome.
Yeah. They do a good job making it exciting to watch. Gotta give them credit for that. That's I mean, when you boil it down, arm wrestling is just two guys holding hands and grunting, and over the top makes it look exciting. They make it look.
At the time, nobody thought that. Nobody think, oh, just two guys holding hands.
Yeah, no one thinks it's weird. You know, everybody's like, yeah.
He even incorporated that little move.
Chicks.
You know, that little move he does where he moves his finger over his thumb.
Yeah, he goes over the top.
He goes over the top.
Yeah.
Oh, my kids were totally doing the move on me. It was great. It was great.
And then they do the leather tie at the end.
Oh yeah, they tie their hands together.
Tether his hand together. Yeah. So, like, is that really just what it is? Like, they just found some niche thing that seemed, you know, to have merit and ran with it?
Yeah, that was an original part of the script from the version that was all the way back from the 70s. And I think the earlier versions incorporated more of Lincoln Hawk hustling people with it. Like that's how he had
Right.
the money to bet
Yeah.
on himself and things like that. And that was
Mhm.
downplayed in the final version of the movie. But I
Yeah,
think
because his
earlier
kid
on,
mentions that like in the beginning when he
Mhm.
arm wrestles the dude in the bar, and the kid accuses him of being a hustler.
You're a
and it's
hustler.
like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
really? How, kid?
How did he hustle him?
Yeah, he didn't really hustle
He
him.
was challenged.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
challenged, but I could see now that you mention it, I was wondering about that if there was like a through line that got.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you're like, if you have a reputation for being like one of the great arm wrestlers around, and someone comes up and challenges you, how do you hustle them?
Yeah.
Right.
So what would he do in the original script? Do you remember anything from like how he would hustle people?
Well, there was more of just he was a truck driver. He would go to these honky tonk truck stop bars and go on and just anybody, I'll arm wrestle anybody for money, and he would always win because he was so good. He was like hustling with pull games, almost the same sort
Right.
of way.
Yeah.
And he would, so that was kind of, I think, in those earlier versions, how he would supplement it, how he had this nest egg that he was going to put into this tournament to kind of turn his
Mhm.
whole life around. There are a lot of things that in this version, as much as I love how family friendly it is and how it is this thing that was very polished, there are storylines that I think do kind of get dropped. and
Really?
and I don't know if it's something that maybe I've noticed just because I've watched this movie over and over again and written about it so many times, but something that the movie never bothers to explain, like where he was, why he wasn't in his son's life.
Yeah, or why he left.
Right.
It never
Yeah, they don't
explains why
really
he
ever
left.
actually touch on that in the
No.
actual finished version, do they? You
No,
know,
no.
It's like there's some sort of misunderstanding or bad blood. I mean, the closest you get to it is he tells Robert Loggia, who I'm pretty sure is a vampire because he's immortal. Like he looks almost the same in this as he does in Independence Day.
You're talking about the grandfather, right?
The grandfather,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, Austin, it's like he tells he basically insinuates to the grandfather or the father-in-law that like he just didn't want Lincoln Hawk in his daughter's life.
Mm-hmm.
And like but like nothing is ever explained like why, aside from like you're just a loser, you know. Like,
yeah. The movie doesn't touch on it. And again, like the earlier versions, he had basically been, I guess, this guy from the wrong side of the tracks that married the wealthy, this guy's into this family, and the father never liked him. And so to kind of prove himself, kind of that he can support his family, he ends up going into the military, and he's gone. And while he's gone this whole time, the grandfather basically like brainwashes the kid and tells him that he's deserted him and all these things like that. So you lose that in the movie entirely. You don't know why Sly hasn't been around, why he hasn't been in you see that his grandfather was hiding the letters to him, but
right.
Yeah, you don't get any of that sense that this whole time he had gone off and his grandfather kind of turned the boy against him. And the timeline is very stretched in a weird way that unfortunately doesn't make sense in the film that we see, but there was more to the story originally.
What you're saying is basically he went off to go be Rambo and then he came back.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
so
what
bizarre.
This is actually like a Rambo, like in between, like
it's tied into the Rambo verse,
Yeah.
So like, that's awesome. I'm so glad we had this conversation, Austin. So is that something that Sylvester Stallone like went back and cut out of the screenplay, or did that just not make it into the versions that he eventually got his hands on.
I think that probably fell out of it beforehand.
Okay.
There was just again. This was something that it went through Gary Conway, David Engelbach, Sterling Siliphant, and then Stallone. So this was a lot of writers each taking their own passes, and some downplaying things or taking things out and forgetting to put them back in. There's something that's totally lost in the movie that you'll get in these earlier versions too, is that he is Native American. Like, he grew up on a reservation. You nothing of that in here. But the Lincoln Hawk name, and he takes in the novel and earlier versions, he takes his son to the reservation that he grows up, and he goes on sort of the spirit journey. He communes with the animals out in the desert so he can psych himself up for this arm wrestling tournament. And none of that is none of that's in the movie. But again, like,
makes perfect sense.
And it would explain why, at least one reason, to give a little context as to why the grandfather would hate Lincoln Hawk so much.
Right. Yeah.
It widens the socioeconomic gap between them. Man, his grandfather must have been loaded, constantly surrounded with like assistants all the time, being driven around in his Rolls Royce, his Lincoln limousine.
It's good to be the Loge.
I guess so.
I mean,
yeah.
There's a gratifying moment when Lincoln Hawk crashes his truck through the gates and right into the front door of the mansion.
Yeah.
That's great.
And that's a great truck. He's got his weights right behind his.
Built into the truck so he can work out while he's driving.
Yeah, yeah. Which doesn't actually look like it does much of anything. Like, I don't know.
I mean, yeah.
I'm no expert, but
no.
It seems like that's maybe just working like your lats back here, and maybe your triceps on just the one side. Like,
I remember I was about my daughter's age when I saw it, and I was over at my cousin's house down in their basement. They had this cool den, and I was so into it, man. I was so into it, but I never watched it after that. I was just, I never went back to it. Didn't know where to find it. Never rented it. I just remember seeing it that one time, 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago. And then we're like, but it, stuck in my memory. And then when you said we're going to do Over the Top next time we talk, I was like, I'm gonna have to watch it again. I'm gonna watch it with my kids. And
that's
wow,
awesome.
It was awesome. It was just as good as I remember being a kid. It was like being a kid again. It was cool. If you guys have not, if you guys have not seen Over the Top, it's on Amazon Prime for free. If you have Amazon Prime, I don't know what it costs to rent it elsewhere, but
it costs like $14.22.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, don't have Prime, huh?
I do. That's the sad thing. I didn't check Prime first. Yeah.
Oh no.
So I went under the bottom.
So I kind of get the sense from you, Austin, that it's not, you're either totally sick of Over the Top because everyone likes to talk about like the best canon film of all time and you're probably tired of it, or you just never really enjoyed it as much as maybe an other canon films.
No, I do enjoy Over the Top quite a bit. It's one that, what's the best way to put this? I suppose because it has such a long production history, and I'm familiar with it from different points in this production history, that it's hard for me to separate all those other kind of storylines that aren't in the movie. It's hard for me to look at it just as for what's there anymore. And that happens sometimes when you write about movies a lot and you really break them down and study them and watch them over and over and over again. It does kind of make it hard to see them as a whole again, rather than just the parts.
Yep. Yep.
And this is one that I have broken down into so many small parts that it's fun to sit back. It's a delightful movie, and it's a fun one. It's one I've had a blast writing about and talking to people who were involved. In the book, I have an interview with David Mendenhall, who was the boy. He was the son in this movie, and he was a kid actor through the 1980s, but he was really, at least my childhood, very much part of so many different things. He was the voice on Transformers. He was the little boy who hung out with the Transformers.
Okay.
And so I knew him from that. He was Brother Bear on the Berenstain Bears cartoon.
Oh, wow.
It's just, so that was something that it was such a treat to get to talk to him a lot and get to know him and interview him. And because he's played this part in my childhood, so many different parts that it was kind of, it was very cool to come full circle in that way.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And
Very cool.
and some of those my kids haven't seen Over the Top yet, but they have seen the Berenstain Bears cartoon on Tubi, and they've watched Transformers with me and things like that. So even they're familiar. They've heard his voice before.
What were some of the obstacles in filming Over the Top? Did it have a long production schedule? I mean, it seems like it's crazy to me that the script was around in the 70s. That this is a movie that was like 10 years in the making. Is that right?
Yeah. It was supposed to be a sequel to, like, a follow-up to a 1978 film, and it ended up being released in 1987.
Really?
So it was around for a long time. Cannon had the script as early as 1981.
Whoa.
And they had, even before they got Sly involved, Don Johnson was somebody that they had, pre-Miami Vice was someone that they had been talking to about playing Lincoln Hawk. And it was something they approached Sly, and Sly loved the script. He wouldn't do it until they made him until they brought the semi trucks full of cash and dumped him onto his lawn.
Yeah.
I mean, fair.
It is a movie that I think is ripe for reappraisal. It is something that if you saw it at that time as a kid, you love it, but now it can get kind of hard to find. They'll reference it. There's a great reference on the show Community where they talk about Over the Top, and I think just when that happened on that show, a lot of people just remember that the movie existed. I think it's something that they forgot about. Even out of the older Stallone movies, we've had reappraisals of Demolition Man and Cliffhanger and some of these non-Rambo, non-Rocky roles, Tango and Cash, and waiting for the Over the Top, the people to come back around and realize how fun this movie is, and what a different sort of role it is in his career, in his I guess the peak, not on the way to the peak of his career. That's interesting. Where do you think his peak was? Because if you were to
hard to tell.
His career, there's quite a few.
Rocky IV.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
You can disagree with me. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
in my mind, that was the peak of his career for all the movies that I saw all of his movies. That's the one I enjoyed the most. That's when he was like most iconic to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What about you, Austin?
I mean, you have to question, like, because Rocky, with the Oscars and box office, that has to be up there. But then you have First Blood and Rambo and this big blockbuster movies. But then you get into 90s Stallone, and where he's kind of can do anything, and people will come to see it. You have him really taking on some kind of wild, weird movies.
Well, he almost becomes like, a self-parody like Schwarzenegger. I mean, when the 90s hit, and it probably was in the 80s too, but I remember in the 90s, especially when The Last Action Hero came out, they kind of juxtaposed Schwarzenegger and Stallone, as being like some weird subconscious competition, with each other, as like the two muscle-bound, like meathead guys, And I don't know which is better, but But yeah, that's true. Like the 90s really were. He was an institution by then.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like when Cliffhanger came out, it was like, oh yeah, of course. Like Sylvester Stallone. Everybody's gonna go see it.
Yeah.
You know? Just because it's Sly. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, if you compare Schwarzenegger and Sly, I think Stallone's more of an American meathead to me.
Yeah, because he's like
He talks, he sounds American.
Yeah, he's like from the Northeast.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Mhm.
J. Reese Bradley
Sounds like a
says-
lug nut when he talks, but at least he sounds like an American lug nut.
Yeah, but Frank Stallone is like super based.
Yeah, I noticed that.
You know, Frank Stallone's awesome.
Yeah.
J. Reese Bradley in the comments says, "Stopper My Mom Will Shoot" is clearly his best. But like Over the Top is so fascinating because, you know, Cannon, like we were talking about earlier, you know, Cannon was known for a lot of smut starting out,
Mhm.
you know, and then they kind of like graduated into this more marketable, somewhat semi-family friendly stuff, you know, and then they tried their hands at like the action stuff as well, Delta Force. They did Cobra. Did they do Cobra also? Is that
They,
right? Or
co-
was that...
they co-produced Cobra. It was mainly done by Warner Brothers, but yeah,
Okay.
their names are on the when you turn on Cobra at the front.
But Over the Top is like just one of the most wholesome movies of the 80s.
Yeah.
You know? And it's so like, I guess, I don't know, Austin, is it like Cannon, they were just like throwing spaghetti against a wall and seeing what sticks? Is that kind of like their approach?
Yeah, so something that Canon that both to why people love them, but also I think that was part of their downfall. Whenever they needed money because they ran out of money making movies, their solution to that was to make even more movies. They would
into it, you know?
They would pre-sell the films so that they would go to the markets, and Italy, Germany, all these different countries would say, we're going to give you this much money for this movie, and then Canon would go make it. So they collected all their cash up front, but then they'd go and they'd spend that cash and then some on other projects or big projects, and they would overextend themselves. And because they were overextended, the only way they knew how to make more money was make more movies. So you get to a point where 1986
Sounds like a self-published author. It's exactly what we do.
Yeah, by 1986, very famously, they went to the Cannes Film Festival and they had their catalog of movies, and there were 60 movies in it for their next calendar year. That is more than a movie a week they were finishing. Feature films in theaters. And
wow.
Again, like then they go and they're very good at making these $1 million Chuck Norris, you know, ninja movies, very cheap breakdancing movies that they would turn around and make a profit, but then they would go promise Sylvester Stallone $12 million. And, you know, normally they could have made an entire series of these for that much, or go promising Mattel, you know, $17 million for Master Universe. And it's just, they really got out of their comfort zone, and that's kind of why they imploded very, very quickly after this sort of string of movies that these big expensive movies that included Over the Top, Superman 4, and then Masters, all in the space of those came out 7 months apart. So
okay.
Why didn't Over the Top do well? Has anybody ever like quantified that? Because it seems like on paper, I mean, well, okay, no, I take it back. On paper, it looks a little retarded, but like when you actually like, you know, it's really just the arm wrestling thing. That's all it is, you know. But then like when you actually like sit there and watch the movie, it's a decent movie. Like it's a solid movie. So like, why didn't Over the Top do well at the box office,
or at least do better?
Yeah.
Well, again, like at this point, Sylvester Stallone, his best movies were sequels. They were parts of properties and franchises and things like that.
Right.
I don't think yet that he was quite Sylvester Stallone the actor. He was the Rocky actor or the Rambo actor, because Cobra didn't do great, and that's really an example of him trying to get away from those get out of those franchises. And
Mhm.
so I think that was part of it. He was not yet Sylvester Stallone, the box office draw. He was the Rocky guy, the Rambo guy. Kind of hadn't gotten to the point where he was the draw rather than the characters he was playing. It was
Mhm.
also released in February, which is a very odd
Oh, yeah.
time
Not a good time.
to. Yeah, this was a
Ugh.
February release, which is a head scratching thing for.
Mhm.
I think Canon just thought they were going to have Masters and Superman in the box office also all be #1 movies, and they didn't want to have their 3 movies competing, so they spaced them out. And
Mm.
I mean, those movies weren't going to eat each other's box office if they, there was no box office for them to eat from each other. But so yeah, Over the Top was, I mean, I think very unkindly reviewed. I read a lot of the old reviews of the Times, and when every local newspaper had their own guy who went and saw the movies for you, and
Mhm.
I think people were all kind of went in with ready to make fun of it, and that was just because the premise is kind of silly. If you're trying to explain, it's a
Arm wrestling movie.
yeah.
But like everything around it is awesome. Like as a movie, like everything around the central conceit of the arm wrestling thing, the whole plot is really great. You have an ostracized father, who's like total blue collar, who like is being sent by his, his wife or ex-wife or whatever to go pick up his kid against her father's wishes. He's on the outs, and she loves him and she loves her son and she wants them to get together because she's, going into the hospital for heart surgery and she doesn't know if she's going to make it or not. So she wants them to bond, and there's like a whole like really cool family dynamic thing going on. And it's a road trip movie. It's got a great like father son, Mandalorian dad vibe,
Very much so.
going on.
Can't have that.
Yeah. So there's just like all these things like on paper that make this movie look awesome. And it really actually like it plays out well. It's a great movie. Like I did not feel bad about spending $14 on this thing.
No,
Good.
It's well shot. It's got a great soundtrack. It's got some great, kind of big. I mean, it's got a Sammy Hagar like theme, like basically a theme song in it, and it's got a lot of good things going for it. It makes arm wrestling look super cool. Like that, I think was the biggest hurdle. The biggest hurdle the movie had to clear, and it does it spectacularly. It, like you said, your children. I remember as a kid wanting to arm wrestle after this.
Yeah.
It
made you think that you would be cool if you'd arm wrestle.
Yeah.
Cool arm wrestling. Oh
yeah.
Jay Reese Bradley's watching. She said, "Stop or My Mom Will Shoot" was a box office failure, and Sly got a Raspberry Award for Worst Actor, which is funny because you talk about, his success had been in like sequels to movies.
Mm-hmm.
They should have made like "Stop or My Mom Will Reload." It could have helped.
And I'm the gun guy.
And then she, and Jerry's also says, "Hey, Jonathan wears his sunglasses at night so I can
watch you when you breathe your storylines."
Didn't you sing that the other day when I was doing the
our stream
captions?
deck screwed up, so like we didn't have our music whenever we read our Patreon members out loud and give them shout outs, so I had to like impromptu with something. And Corey Hart's. I wear my sunglasses at night. But like, okay, so Over the Top, why should people watch Over the Top? I mean, we've talked about it forever. We love it. We thought it was great.
Besides, I think they should
evangelize for Over the Top. Awesome.
Well, I think if you're looking for a way to break your kids into the canon library, it's a much better introduction to their films than the ones I got. Even though I'm grateful for seeing those Chuck Norris movies at that very formative age. You can feel better about showing them this one. It is a very heartwarming story. You both touched on it. This is a movie about a dad trying to reconnect with a son who has been kind of forcefully removed from his life and wrongfully. And really this kid has all these notions about his father that are very classist, very just awful things that his grandfather has planted in there. But it takes him a long time to, and it takes Sylvester Stallone's character a lot of work to really kind of overcome these things. And he's working with limited tools. He's somebody who hasn't had an opportunity to be a dad, but he does know how to arm wrestle. He knows how to drive truck. He's I mean, he has these values, at least, he can try to instill in his, I as bad as I feel to say it, his snotty brat kid, when he picks him up. And there's some great, I mean, there's some good action. There's not just the movie is Sylvester Stallone versus like a 12-year-old boy, basically, is like the main the main clash there.
Well, that's the thing about the kid. He might be a snotty, spoiled kid, but he's redeemable too.
Yeah.
He comes back and forth. He can come out of that too. As he gets to know his father, he like starts being a real kid. Like,
and he's very. What's interesting about that though is that like you can tell this kid is Silver Spoon, but he's in. I want to say he's in Marine JROTC.
Some sort of military academy,
which is typically like not reserved for the upper crust. You don't typically send your kid, if you're upper crust, you don't typically send your kid to like, especially Marine JROTC.
Are you sure it was Marine?
I'm not totally sure, but I thought I saw some marksmanship medals on his lapel. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, it's interesting that like they juxtapose that, and then like there are all these like really sweet moments in it and symbolic moments, like when he darts out across the road in the beginning, he gets his jacket, his sleeve torn off, and then like one of Nick's favorite parts is when they're arm wrestling in the arcade with the kids.
Love that. He makes his son arm wrestle that.
You defeated yourself. They didn't defeat you. You beat yourself.
And the kid he arm wrestles too. Look, to me, he looks
like
just
Bart Simpson.
No, he looks just like it. Well, that too, but he looks just like Scott Farkas from the Christmas Story, the kid with the yellow eyes, the bully. Yeah. It's the same vibe, dude. It's got the same vibe. And the kid loses. He's humiliated. His father's embarrassed him. He goes out in the parking lot, and then you hear the whole moral lesson of the movie.
Yeah,
it's like the world's never gonna meet you halfway. If you want something, you got to go take it.
Yeah,
it's like, well, that's true.
And you defeated yourself.
Yeah. And then he faces that same thing in the arm wrestling tournament at the end, where it's all about like,
he has that Rocky moment.
Yeah.
He has that Rocky moment where he's like, I don't know if I can beat him. And
it's a very prominent theme of
underdog
intimidation. Intimidation's how you win.
Yeah,
and not being intimidated is how you can fight back.
Right, not
Yeah, I'm like, a lot of the power that all those guys had against their opponent was their ability to get in their face when they're about to arm wrestle and intimidate them. And then, of course, I mean, a lot of their powers, they're freaking, big ass muscles, but
massive freaking bicep.
But that was a big, that psychological thing was huge, and that's the only reason his son couldn't do what he knew his son could do.
And it's the movie, like, as you mentioned, was the last half hour is this arm wrestling tournament in Vegas, and it's exciting. It is legitimately very exciting to watch these matches, as it is very Rocky like.
It is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, because you get like 2 eliminations.
Yeah, double elimination.
So like it raises the stakes. It's a smart script. It really like. Sylvester Stallone, that's one of the weirdest things. What do you like? I'd be curious to hear what your commentary is on this, Austin, because like Sylvester Stallone has always had this rap of being the Italian stallion meathead, right? But like he wrote Rocky. He punched up the script on Over the Top, and Over the Top is like a legitimately good script.
Yeah, I think so.
So like he's clearly not a dummy. Like, how do you think that happened? Is that just like bad luck, or do you think that's like something calculated that he did?
You mean his reputation?
Yeah.
I mean, it's as bad as it sounds. I think people get that impression because of the way he speaks. He's got a bit of a speech impediment.
Yeah,
and that has to do with actually when he was born, like in delivery, he was one of the tools that they helped bring him out.
Forceps, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They damaged half of his face, so he has like a slight paralysis in some of the muscles over there, and that's why he talks out of the side of his mouth. And
Okay.
unfortunately, I mean, Stallone, he plays these characters who are kind of these like violent or meatheads and things like that, but he's I think a very smart man. I think he's got a very good sense of not just storytelling but visual storytelling. He's directed a lot of movies as well, and he's very famous for directing a lot of the action in his movies. In this film, this film was directed by Menachem Golan, who was one of the two heads of Canon. Directed this himself, and he would butt heads a lot with Sly on the set.
Really?
Yeah. But he would always tell people, he's like, I'm going to listen to him. Like, he's won Oscars. Like, he's been part of all these movies. Like, Menachem would say that to press. He's like, if he has an opinion, if he has input, I'm going to hear it, because I don't have that. He had been working for 30 years at that point, making movies, and made so many films, but he did not have that same level of success. So he was willing to take Sly's input, and if Sly wanted to shoot something some other way, he would shoot it both ways.
Yeah.
And I think Sylvester Stallone, it is an unfair reputation, because I think he is pretty smart when it comes as a storyteller, both visually and as a screenwriter.
It seems like it. I mean, I don't, for myself, I've never been the biggest Rambo fan. I appreciate him, but I never really watched him. But I'll tell you, like, dude, the last 30 minutes of Rambo 2008, where he's just like blowing people into chunks with the 50 cal with the mod deuce, is like maybe arguably, especially as a Christian, I watched that movie and I'm like, yeah, sometimes guess what? You got to show up with a mod deuce, and you got to turn like a trooper truck, basically into a sloppy Joe can, like, and he's got to have a hand in all that stuff. Like, the dude's a friggin' genius. He's like an unsung hero of Hollywood. What are some of your favorite things about Over the Top that you wish people would know about, whether it's behind the scenes stuff or the casting or the budget or the shooting or any of the weird things that have happened?
Well, I touched on it earlier, but the product placement is something if you watch the movie with that in mind, it's hard not to see it, because this movie was very heavily paid for in product placement. If you're sitting and watching the movie and you've got, a mug full of something hard beverage, and you take a sip every time you see a very prominent brand shown.
Oh, the drinking game. Yeah.
You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it.
You won't make it to Vegas, will you, Austin?
No, every time you see a truck parked anywhere, every one of those trucks is like plastered with like branding. You see the Pepto-Bismol bottle when like Grizzly's drinking from it, and you can tell like the label is very clearly turned towards the camera. You can tell that somebody went in and adjusted it because somebody paid. So something I love is they had so much product placement in this movie that they had companies that actually paid them, and they had forgot to put it in, and it led to trouble. They ended up getting sued because these companies had paid money to be included, and there was so much product placement they just couldn't keep track. There was a vitamin brand, one that's not around anymore, and there was a scene where Lincoln Hawk was supposed to be just like pounding these vitamins throughout the movie, and just by like a handful, and that didn't get in there, and so there was a lawsuit for that. But I that's something that's fun for me to watch I've watched some of these movies like 5, 6, 7 times in a row as I'm writing about them or researching. It's fun to have a little game, not with the beverage in hand, but where I'm like, okay, like let's watch this and see all of the featured promotional consideration products that we see. That's something you can do for a lot of Canon movies, though. You'll be surprised if you watch Canon movies and see how much Pepsi everybody drinks in these films, because Pepsi had a great relationship. They were always writing checks to Canon to get included, and you'll have some of these scenes. Breakin' 2, there's a great crowd scene where they're everybody's dancing as they're doing the big show at the end, and you see so many Pepsi hats, so many Pepsi drinks. There's like in the movie, there's supposed to be people that are just coming from around downtown Los Angeles to see this show, but then if you think about it, like, okay, half of Los Angeles must have been wearing Pepsi gear when they came to this. It looks like a commercial, and that sort of stuff happens all the time in canon movies because they needed to get money somewhere, but over the top they did it on a much bigger scale. Companies were willing to pay a lot more to have their product shown in the same frame as Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, just the sheer presence of Sylvester Stallone.
Oh yeah,
must have been worth whatever they're willing to pay. And Pepsi had for at least 10 years, if not 15 years, Pepsi had a real hardcore run. Because especially when they tied in with Pizza Hut, and in the mid to late 90s when the Star Wars prequels were being re-released, or not the prequels, but the originals were being re-released and leading up to the prequels. Dude, Pepsi was all over the place. They were hammering it. They were going after Coke.
Do you guys have a pop or soda where you are? What was it in your neck?
Well, we've had all of them. We have all of them down here.
Coke's the big
Coke product.
Diet Coke. We're in the South, so Diet Coke.
Oh, okay.
Right, you got to get that aspartame.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm a Coca-Cola guy. I like Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I like root beer, baby. I'm all about Barks root beer.
Barks, yeah.
Dude. Barks root beer. Call us. we'll do some Golden Galami, shameless promotion, or dude, I will drink Barks root beer every show.
I bet you would.
Yeah, straight from a 2 liter.
I'll keep my eyes open.
Yeah, I'll drink a whole 2 liter on camera if they pay us.
So Austin, tell people about your books. You have 2 volumes of the Canon Film Guide. Tell people where they can find them.
Sure, they can be found anywhere fine books are sold. If you have a local bookstore, that's always the first place I'll encourage people to go. If you are lucky to have brick and mortar, support them as much as you can, because
amen, baby.
Yeah, they keep getting further and further away. I'm happy even when I can drive 35 minutes to get to a Barnes and Noble at this point. That's even the big chains are struggling these days. So
they're closing down all over the place. I was late today because I was going up to I've had a lot of stress lately, so I decided to buy a motorcycle. And
awesome. That's a great way to kill stress. That's awesome.
I think so, dude.
The coolest way.
Yeah, I love tons of bikes, but it's been 25 years since I sat on a bike, and I found a Harley Davidson 2014 Fat Bob at a dealership up in Madison, and I pulled the trigger on it today. But that's why I was late getting back down here. Yeah.
Did you? You got it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it'll be delivered after I send my insurance information.
All right.
So, but yeah, dude, I'm totally looking forward to it, which is also one of the most 80s thing you could do, is to get a motorcycle and be like, I'm just going to ride.
Did you arm wrestle the rep for a discount?
I should have.
Oh, there
I'm an idiot.
If I can, if you, I'll pay you full price if you can beat me.
Yeah.
Arm wrestle.
Yeah, I'll pay full price if you can beat me.
Double elimination. If I win, 20% off.
But dude, as I was driving up there, I was going up to Madison. As I was driving up there, I noticed that there was a Books A Million, and sure enough, man, it was shuttered. They're closing it down. And I'm just like, another one.
Yeah, they shuttered the one here in town. Spring Hill down.
Dude, it's a shame. So you're absolutely right when you talk about supporting your local brick and mortar, because they're going away, man.
Yeah. And they can order, most anything you can get on Amazon. So,
dude, that's how Amazon got started. When I worked in 2002 and 2003, I worked at Borders, and they had teamed up with Amazon. So, if you wanted to get a rare or hard to find or special edition kind of book or whatever that we didn't carry in stock through our distributors, you could go through Amazon through us to do it. That was one of the coolest jobs I ever had.
Where those stores really missed it is that you go and you say, hey, do you have such and such title? And they're like, no, but we can order it for you. And you're thinking, I just ordered it on Amazon. They should say, no, but we can order it to you and have it sent to your house. You'll have it tomorrow. We'll have it shipped right to your house.
Yeah.
They never did that. You have to come back to the store to pick up the book. Nobody else do that.
Yeah.
I can stand right there and order from Amazon. It'll probably get to the house before I get home.
Yeah, they'll drop it off with a drone.
They would never send it like just to wherever you are.
Yeah. And the drone sprays nanobots that, give you some sort of super AIDS, I don't know. Whatever.
Super AIDS.
That's a South Park reference.
That's very 80s. It's very 80s.
So people can find your book in brick and mortar bookstores.
Yes. And then failing that, all over online. It can be ordered.
Cool.
Very cool.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. We feel, Chris Caps, one of our guys in the comments, he's a really good friend of ours. He said starting to become like Blockbuster also, and it's the same kind of thing, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Austin, I got to ask you, was the world, because I've been talking about this with my friends a lot lately, and they're going to talk about this all the time. Was the world maybe cooler before the internet?
I think so. I don't want to be the old man. I feel like an old man here, but I mean, there was definitely.
I'll be. Yes. Yes, it was.
Yeah. Well, something that drives me nuts nowadays, I kind of miss is knowledge was passed along in a very organic way. If you wanted to become good at a video game or learn a secret code, it was something that somebody read in a magazine and they told you and told you and told you. And now, I mean, again, it's different generations, and I can't shake my cane at my children, but my daughter wants to learn how to do something in Minecraft. She'll ask to borrow my phone, and she knows how to get to the app and to Google like a whole list of how to mix 50 different potions or something. And in my day, it was very trial and error, and But I'm guilty of that now too. I used to be knowledgeable. I used to know things, and now I just look them up on my phone. I don't keep I don't keep facts. I don't look out the window to see what the weather's like. I ask Siri. That's
I know, right?
So I can't yell at my children's generation, because I am very guilty of the same things that drive me nuts that I see them do.
Well, it's so easy. It's also convenient. That's one of the things we really like about like what you're doing with the Canon Film Guide, and sort of that age that you hearken back to, of like there is this like pre-internet like raw age where you had to kind of like live in the moment, man.
And it was simpler. It was just simpler.
Yeah,
it didn't move as fast.
Yeah.
And in the same front of movies, I think about video stores, and you had this almost very regional sense of what movies were great, what were the best movies. There were certain things that you would go in and the video store clerks would recommend, or I remember there being certain tapes that all of my friends would all be into because we had rented them, and then we'd gone and told our friends to rent them, and it was the same tape from the one video store that got passed around, and it's sort of you built this thing around it, and now it's so spread out. If somebody's talking about the movie, the entire world's talking about the movie, and you have to all be talking about the same things at the same time. And again, this is me with the Simpsons meme, like old man yells at clouds, but I miss the cool movies being whatever weird movie like a bunch of 10-year-olds happen to get hooked on at one time that people outside of that one store never got rented at the next store over. That was it was a aspect. There was a different sort of fandom. It was very locally based and very based on word of mouth.
Yeah, I remember like there was a cool like tribal, almost like Goonies like adventure element to like go into the Blockbuster or the movie gallery, because you got to like look around for all the weird, or like a comic book shop, you got to like look around for all the weird movies, and like you would like, I remember my mind being blown when I saw like Mark Hamill in a movie that wasn't Star Wars. Like Time Runner or something, some awful piece of crap, that just was like, what is this? But Mark Hamill's in it, like Luke Skywalker, and he looks old, And so like there's like this real tangible like adventure quality to it, I'm gonna bring that back.
Well, you had to go there for one. You had to get a ride. To go there. It was always a social thing until you could drive your own car.
And you and your dad would go, right, Austin?
Yeah. And at that age,
you couldn't scroll titles behind the in the privacy of your home. You had to walk down the aisles cognizant of what section you were in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if you're too young, you know, heaven forbid your parents see you staring at the wrong, you know, shelf.
Yeah. I can close my eyes and I can take myself to my childhood video store, that first place we to rent movies, and it's funny because I can't remember half the people I went to high school with. I probably wouldn't recognize them, but I can tell you where like certain tapes were on shelves that were in a video store when I was like 4 years old, 5 years old. And, you know, I can tell you that all the martial arts were on the bottom shelf because that was my eye level at that time. At that time, so like I became very familiar with all of these like kung fu movie covers that, you know, even to this day, some of them I don't remember titles, but I can remember the poster. I could, you know, do a police sketch of it for you.
Yeah.
But
Jay Reese asked if anyone played with Pogs when they were a kid. Did you ever do Pogs?
Yeah, a little bit. I remember that came and went really fast through through mine.
There wasn't enough violence in Pogs for me to be interested in it.
I don't think I lived in such a remote area. All we had access to was like marbles. And there was a marble face. I did go through a marble face.
There was only one marble.
Yeah.
And you had to fight
and I
over
lost.
It. Nick grew up in Idaho, so like
there was nothing.
Dude,
there was
Napoleon Dynamite is 100% accurate.
Oh yeah.
To this day, it's probably 100% accurate.
It's pretty accurate. Yeah. Those were the people I grew up with. Haven't helped me.
Well, Austin, any final thoughts or final words on Over the Top for us? I know we're a little bit past time. We really appreciate you indulging us.
I should say too, and if you guys haven't seen it yet, before you close your YouTube window or anything tonight, type in the browser, look up the video for the Sammy Hagar Over the Top, because they shot it and Stallone is in it and they're arm wrestling throughout it, and I think it's very, very unbelievable that there's a moment in this music video where Sammy Hagar beats Sylvester Stallone in arm wrestling.
Of course. Right.
And it's definitely the hardest, like the most acting Sly has probably ever done. Just to like be like to act like he's being defeated by Sammy Hagar. You can tell he hates it, but definitely check out that music video because it's
all right.
It's a great little bit of tie-in.
All right,
that's awesome. You know, there's an element of like Karate Kid energy to Over the Top, also
a little bit, yeah.
You know, it's almost like the canon version of Karate Kid, and like a weird sort of, I don't know. Yeah, it's got that kind of like scrappy underdog vibe.
Yeah. I thought that while I was watching it,
with a competition at the end.
Yeah, and injured before his last fight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely right.
Has to get a pep talk.
Yep, it's got to get the pep talk.
Yeah, just like Rocky.
Yeah. But dude, it's a formula that works. Like, dude, that's the thing about, I was telling Nick about these movies. It's like, honestly, I know everybody like dogs on canon films, but honestly, man, they're so gratifying. Like, what more do you want out of a movie? You know what I mean? Like,
I'll say this too, and this is something that even my son noticed, that in Over the Top, like back in the 80s, in that movie, when someone would lose, and it was very intense. You have these two huge dudes hating each other and just going after it in this arm wrestling competition. And when they'd lose, they'd like congratulate each other, hold each other's hands up. They would lose with dignity.
I noticed that.
A little self-respect.
Yeah.
Even Bob Hurley at the end is lifting up Lincoln's arm.
Dude, that's his whole identity, right?
Yeah, I mean, if the whole movie, you think he's gonna kill him. If he loses, he's just gonna murder everybody. Not like that at all.
Yeah.
No, yeah, they are.
And it just seems foreign now. It just seems kind of foreign for some reason.
Yeah. They're great. They're great sports about it, and I think that also, while they were preparing for this movie, they actually did have an over-the-top tournament that was kind of tied into this. But there was the championships were actually held concurrent to the filming. So you had all of these real arm wrestlers in Los Angeles for it. Some of them who made cameos in the film and things like that. But I think I think that was pretty reflective of how this sport actually was at the time and how competitors treated each other.
Yeah.
And had
and another reason why it's a great family movie.
It's it's a absolutely fantastic family film, and
I think so.
Yeah, again, it's a great way to break into the canon library. It's probably better than jumping straight into like the Invasion USA, Chuck Norris terrorist type movies that they made lots of. But yeah, it is a very endearing film, and it is a very different role for Sylvester Stallone. It's again, you don't see movies where I think the person he struggles with the most is a kid. It's his son, and it's you didn't expect that, especially at that time. His previous movie was Cobra prior to this, Cobra and a Rambo. So
my son was like, I know him. Where do I know him from? I'm like, you don't. You haven't seen anything.
You know him from
you
UHF.
haven't seen anything.
You've seen Weird Al impersonate him in UHF.
So remember, I said, remember UHF, and George has the machine gun and he's acting like Rambo. This is the guy that plays the actual Rambo. Like, no, that's not it. I'm like, trust me.
It is.
You haven't.
Don't argue with me.
Yeah.
Go to your room.
We were in his room. I was just like, let's just keep watching the movie. Let's play.
Did this movie, since you have such a close tie with your father over Canon Films, was this movie like especially relevant to you, Austin, with your dad? Or was this one of those that was like, yeah, it's a little cheesy. Let's get back to Delta Force.
Yeah, I think it was more towards the latter there.
Really?
It was something that it would have been more my wanting to rent it in my comfort areas than like we would have been watching Commando or something more likely if it were up to him. But no, I again, it is like it's hard for me to watch any Stallone movie without thinking of him, and watching those movies with him. Anytime now, even at the very top of the show, you mentioned John Wick, and I watch a movie like that, and I'm like, oh, this is a movie my dad would have loved. Like this is,
right,
Like I remember, my dad's been gone for a while now, but back I had already, I was already out of the house and an adult, but we went and saw the Matrix movies together, and it was him. He was like, I was excited. I loved the Matrix movies, but he was really pumped for each one, and I loved that. I loved that excitement, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, he would have loved John Wick.
Yeah. Your dad's awesome.
Oh, he was the coolest, and just definitely a huge. Like he loved watching these action movies. I loved watching them with him. For any of your Sly, your Arnie's, the Terminators, like it's Terminator 2 were like very repeat rentals. Those are movies I would watch over and over again with him. And
and they never get old. There's something magical about some of those movies where you really can't just watch them forever,
Yeah, they hold up under repeat viewings.
They hold up. Yep.
Yeah, your Predator, all these just classics. It was a run that's just a period of action filmmaking that really it's hard to compete with. There are some great ones today, but there was something magic about those movies from 1980 to the mid 90s that just were unlike anything else.
Oh, dude, it's so gratifying and it so resonates. That's one of the things I really enjoy about Canon films, especially the second half of their catalog. So okay, we got to get you back like in the fall sometime. So I picked Masters of the Universe because I love it. Nick kind of picked Over the Top because he's a big dork.
I am. I am. It's okay. No, it's okay. I am.
And apparently we're selfish hosts because we didn't offer Prima Nocta to the guest. So, Austin, let's get you back in the fall. What movie do you want to talk about?
Oh my goodness, I'm on the spot now. Let's see. American Ninja would be great.
I know you like that.
I do love American Ninja.
American movie.
Or Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Norris America. Where he like shows up like Jack Bauer in all the random places and kills the terrorists.
Yeah, that's Invasion USA for you there. But American Ninja's a great one. I was a little led, but you're absolutely right.
One or two. There's a second one, right? Isn't there American Ninja too?
There's actually 5 of them.
Revenge of the Ninja. Revenge of the Ninja.
Revenge of the Ninja is great. It's actually celebrating its 40th anniversary this fall. If we watch that one. But
okay,
yeah,
of the 5, which one is the best? Which one's your favorite of the 5?
Well, you said American Ninja, and I'm kind of leaning that way. That's something that on the very first show, I think that I spoke with you guys, I shared my memories of being out in the yard with a stick, like pretending I was Michael Dudikoff. That's a good one. That's a great way to really. It's the start of their second ninja series. And there were 5 American ninjas. So let's go with that. Let's go with that.
Right. Ninja in the fall.
I'm in.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Sounds good to me, man.
Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide. You can find it in your local brick and mortar bookstores, which is preferable. If you have to get it online, fine. What's the website where people can find you?
I can be found on Facebook and on Twitter. I guess it's not Twitter anymore, though. X. I'm not going to call it X. You can find me on Twitter. We'll say that. At Canon Film Guide on both sites.
Nice.
Right on.
And hey, too, if I can promote something real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Absolutely.
If anybody is in the Pennsylvania-ish area, like the Mahoning Drive-In, which is a legendary, awesome drive-in, kind of out in the middle of PA. They only show 35 millimeter. They only show older movies, original film prints, and they're doing a Canon all-night Dusk Till Dawn Canon marathon on August 12th. Wow. So I will be there hosting. I'll be introducing the movies, doing Q&As and stuff. So if anybody is in that area and they are free on August 12th, it's going to be a fun time. They really go all out for their shows, and they have camping at the drive-in. It's a great place. And even if you don't come for that one, if you ever anyone finds themselves in the PA area, it's just it's a fun drive. It's 5 hours for me, a 5-hour drive, and I still go. I do my best to make out a few times each summer because it's such a fun place to watch movies. They actually had last summer. They had, when you said Scott Farkas, they had Christmas in July, and they showed A Christmas Story and a few other holiday movies. But Scott Farkas was there.
Oh,
and
cool.
They had him he was taking pictures with people and stuff, doing a Q&A. So it's a blast. It's a fun place.
Very cool.
Dude, that's so cool. Where can people find information about that?
Yeah, just Mahoning Drive-In. I think it's Mahoning DIT. If you do a Google search, that unfortunately I don't know what the URL
is. It Mahoney or Mahoning?
Mahoning. Mahoning. It's also, if you go to either of my pages, it's the tagged, pinned, both on my Facebook and Twitter.
Cool.
So
awesome. Dude,
yeah, it'll be a fun event.
I'm a little tempted to maybe drive my motorcycle up there.
There you go.
If I get my endorsement in time.
It's a one-seater, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah. The movies.
I'd hate to make you sit behind me.
Yeah. Well, my motorcycle sure rides cool.
Can you get a sidecar on there?
Dude, there was legit. There was a Royal Enfield motorcycle. Yeah, just go, man. Oh, that's warm. There was a Royal Enfield that someone was selling on Facebook Marketplace for $6 or $7 grand. That did have a sidecar. Oh, dude, I was tempted.
Put your little pit bull in there.
Put Lily in there. Put a little Red Baron scarf and some goggles on her.
So good.
So yeah. All right, Austin Trunick, this has been awesome. We always enjoy our time with you. Thank you so much for hanging with us, talking about Over the Top. Author of the Canon Film Guide, Volume 1 and 2. Volume 3 coming out soon?
I'm working on it. Not soon. I won't promise soon, but I'm hard at work on it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, people will hopefully stay in touch on your social media and find out, and then and let's get back together in the fall and talk about American Ninja, baby.
I am excited for that. Yeah, let's do it.
I'll be ready.
You're the best, Austin.
Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Have a good one.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
There you go, guys. Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide. He is so much fun, man.
Yeah, it's
He's
fun.
so cool.
Breath of fresh air, talking about fun movies like that from our childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
Something that's not dark and heavy and
Yeah, we have a lot of really great guests and we talk about a lot of really heavy stuff. And one of the things we love about Austin is that he comes on Thursdays when we do the Church of What's Cool, and which is funny. And like we just talk about fun stuff, man. We just talk about like cool movies,
Yep.
you know? And he's such a sweetheart and like he's smart, dude. He knows everything about Canon films.
Yeah.
And like you don't think that Canon films are important to American cinema, you don't know what you're talking about. Like Canon films are an institution. They are a part of America.
I know hardly anything about them, and I understand how important they are.
Yeah, yeah. So Austin, man, I'm telling you, like that's like, I want to kind of say like Austin's like a national treasure, you know, like I'm so like
He's the great chronicler, if you will.
yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
Well, what's cool about Austin is that like he does that. One of the reasons why he does these books and why he's so obsessed with Canon films is because of his relationship with his father growing up, you know. And we've talked about that just about every time we've interviewed Austin, and we really appreciate that because that's kind of, you know, that's kind of the motto of the Gosslings. It's like right in line with what we're talking about, and like honoring dad culture is really cool.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Austin's a sweetheart. We really enjoy our time with him. So
Absolutely.
anyways, I know it's time for you to like
We
check
got to
on the
go.
kids.
Yeah, we got to go. Anything else before we sign off?
Gosshog Lifts. He is. We probably should give him a shout out.
Yeah, let's give Gosshog Lifts a shout out.
real quick.
Go to Gosshog Lifts on Instagram. Gosshog Lifts for fitness content that inspires young men to reclaim their identity and purpose in a generation of darkness. And I think he'll be here with us this Sunday.
Yeah.
With a special guest.
Yeah, we got a good Illuminati after party.
Yeah,
coming up
for the
you guys
Illuminati
on
after party. It's
Sunday,
gonna be
so you guys
fun.
have to check it in.
Gonna be fun. Got some new stuff going on.
It's gonna be a wild ride.
Gosshog will be here.
The last ride of the Gosslings and their immortals. So, and then let's see. Let's do the Patreon real quick, and then we'll bounce out of here.
All right, Patreon.
I mean, we got our books. You guys know we write books. You know,
Yeah.
whatever. Anyways.
We would love your support. Help us grow the channel, reach more wonderful guests like Austin.
Yeah.
Go over to patreon.com/the Gosslings. We've got multiple levels of support. We'd appreciate anything you can do to help us out. Helps us keep the equipment fresh, pay for the streaming service, do all the things. It really, really supports us.
You can
Helps
see
out
the
greatly.
ring light that I just bought in my glasses
Yes,
right now.
we had to get a refresher light.
It kind of
Yeah.
makes me look like a weird, like They Live alien,
Let's see if I can get it in
my
my glare.
eyeballs.
There it is in my
Yeah.
glare. Right there. Right
Yeah.
there.
Just put on the
Right.
glasses or start eating that trash can. Hey,
But if you could support us at the Patreon, that'd be fantastic.
yes, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And,
Yeah, support us on the Patreon. That'll help out. And then go check out Austin Trunick's book, The Canon Film Guide, volumes 1 and 2. And man, we can't wait for volume 3 to come out. That's another good excuse to have him back on.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
like any excuse to hang out with Austin, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't care. Yeah. What do you want to talk? What's your favorite color? Like cats or dogs?
I hope he comes through. It'd be cool if he came through Nashville. We could.
Oh,
him
that
in
would
here
be cool.
in
Actually,
studio.
I
That'd be
got
cool.
some news for you. We got one of our other guests who's actually coming through Nashville in a couple
Oh.
weeks.
Hmm.
Yeah. Actually, we got 2 guests who might be coming through Nashville in the next 2 weeks to 2 months.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they can, there's no AC in here. If they can take the heat,
I think
I'll do the cooking.
I think we'll probably end up getting together with them, but we'll have some behind the scenes stuff. We might be
Yeah.
able to do some behind the scenes stuff, like recording maybe, Yeah, who
what
knows?
are you talking about? Okay, we got to go so he can tell me about this. This is great.
You never know, baby. All right. Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide. Check him out. We always enjoy him. He'll be back in the fall where we'll talk about American Ninja.
Yes.
In the meantime, join us on Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time for the Illuminati After Party, where we will be hanging out with Gosshog Lifts and another special guest who is yet to be announced, but you will enjoy it. It's a special surprise for us. We're really looking forward to it. And until then, we hope everybody has a great rest of the week. We will see everybody on Sunday. In the meantime, I am Jonathan.
It's Luciferi.
And I'm Nick.
I'm your huckleberry.
And we are the Gosslings.
I got it working.
You got to work
I
it.
did.
Go forth.
And strike down the mother darkness.
Vertical punch.